discussed in the past about terrible reactionary YouTube and tabloids and the culture, basically, more or less, is that I knew very, very quickly, the moment I saw some characters appear in the Halloween apocalypse, that that corner of the fandom would have very stern words to have with their moral compass. We're talking, of course, if we look at this production still, this production image, this is Diane in the episode The Halloween Apocalypse. Now, Diane is played by Nadia Albina, who was a very lovely, fun, great presence in the episode. She only was on screen for a couple of minutes, but as people in chat are saying, that they had like a date. They seemed like a really cute couple together. However, what you will notice, the discerning people amongst you will notice, that Nadia has no right arm. She was born without a right arm. She is a disabled actor. However, she has been working in the industry for about 12 years on stage and screen, and I think it's awesome that she's part in the Doctor Who universe. And as an idiot online says in the chat, oh yeah, I didn't even notice that, because they really, really underplayed it. They really didn't dwell on it at all. It just seemed a case of Robin McGinn saying, how did I not notice that? Yeah, they don't draw attention to it. There's something maybe about the subtext. I think some people have said that when she's talking about Dan going on a date at the front of the museum, she's talking about, if you don't want to. Some people maybe read it into some subtext there. But of course, we knew that reactionary Doctor Who YouTube and reactionary Twitter would have a massive issue with this. Now, we're just going to sidestep slightly, because of course, pathological liar and also white supremacist platformer Nerdrotic had many things to say about this episode, because he did a review with HeelvsBabyFace. And HeelvsBabyFace is a YouTuber who, honestly, I don't know anything about. He's a name who frequently pops up, but I've not actually watched any of his stuff. So this was actually my first impressions of Heel versus Babyface, and it was very illuminating. But let's first talk about just the absolute need of a victim complex here. The absolute need of a victim complex here. Because as I've said before, Nerdrotic is basically a pathological liar. And I don't think I've ever seen a video from Nerdrotic that wasn't just wall-to-wall misinformation. And it was so interesting watching this, where he takes what I actually agree with, a point about having Joseph Williamson in 1820 Liverpool at the beginning of the episode. And that it's very, very strange that they just cut to that randomly. They still felt the need to make it a victimization argument. Let's take a look.
We end up in Liverpool, 1820, with two evil white men industrialists calling for more workers, the poor, the soldiers.
Oh, by the way, in chat, you could tell they're evil because they were white.
They were white, obviously. And then they had a talk about the hole they're digging. And they're digging a hole, and it doesn't make any sense. It's random. The one evil white guy calls out the other evil white guy and says, why are you digging this hole? It's random. It doesn't make any sense. And he's all, nothing makes sense.
So when it comes to the actual content of the scene itself, I've got the transcript. Williamson, for the love of God, what are you doing here? Why all this digging? Williamson says, I provide work and wages for those who would otherwise not find it. Is that not enough? And the guy responds, of course, it is laudable, but do you not think about what you're creating? So Nerdrotic just saw two white guys on his TV screen and just immediately thought, those are two bad guys. That's very racist of Nerdrotic and Heels versus Babyface, firstly, but also the fact that he just had to lie about the content of the scene to make that argument. It's so nuts. He's actually told that him having employment for the soldiers and the people who would otherwise not find it was laudable, and here he is saying no, the episode depicts him as two evil white guys.
And that's why people are running to YouTube channels so they can get a little honesty.
Astounding. I've said before that I don't think I've ever watched a Nerdrotic video that wasn't just complete misinformation. I genuinely think that there's something about Gary, something deep down, Gary is Nerdrotic, something deep down, this Paleolithic instinct deep within his DNA that renders him just simply incapable of ever being able to tell the truth about something. And the victim complex with these guys are so strong that they just saw two white guys, instantly assumed they were going to be portrayed as villains. And these folks, I assume, have issue with identity politics. Absolutely. This bit, however, we've said before the live stream where Bolstrek was on live stream for Fugitive of the Jadoon and claimed that a white male was the villain. And they just ran with it. The people on the live stream were like, yeah, white male villain in Fugitive of the Jadoon, which we have to completely remind you folks, never happens in the episode.
And let's not forget, a white dude is the villain. We've learned that.
So we got a new villain. We got a new villain that was apparently trapped by two non-binary lesbians, or just two non-binary people.
Full disclosure, I thought the black one was a dude.
Not a dude.
Until they opened the mouth, and then I was like, holy shit, okay, shit, that's a woman.
We'll just say a couple of days have somebody imprisoned.
A couple of they-thems.
And I have noticed in Doctor Who, and this goes back to the Moffat era, maybe even to RTD, that most military commanders or security are female now. They have just gotten away with the big brawny men. I guess we're not really necessary anymore. You know,
why have a big brawny man when a 90-pound woman can easily take care of them?
Mm-hmm.
So, firstly, like I said, I've never watched a Heel versus Babyface video before. I don't know anything about the guy, but mistaking a black woman for a man is pretty mask-off racist. That's quite a first impression. But these guys go off on a tangent about there being two non-binary people in the episode with absolutely no evidence. Why? Because they're in suits of armor with short hair? Like, would they call Ellen Ripley from Alien, like, a non-binary representation if it came out now? Like, oh my goodness. And also the fact that they say, oh, the 90-pound woman, they don't need to be guards. Firstly, this guy here, Heels versus Babyface, he looks like the type of guy who would easily be beaten up by one of those women quite easily. And not only that, I think he would get some sort of enjoyment out of it. Gary over here, though, he gets absolutely no sexual enjoyment unless he's lying to someone. That's the only way he can achieve climax nowadays. But like I said, we saw this on like Nerdrotic's video Fugitive of the Jadoon, where white supremacist Bolstrek just invents a white male villain for the episode, and Gary and whoever it was in that live stream just uncritically go along with it. Like, Heel vs. Babyface could have complained about a scene where Yasmin Khan kicks a baby into the sun, and Nerdrotic would just go with it. They'd just run with the narrative. They would run with that delusion. It's completely nuts. But we also have this moment as well, and this is where we're going to be talking about the disability representation.
And then he gets berated by a woman because he doesn't work there.
Yeah. And she only has one arm, so there's representation, and that matches the representation I saw in the weather while I was watching the BBC before that with the weather girl with one arm, which is totally cool. That's totally fine.
BBC have got to hit I think it's a 9% disabled quota.
Okay.
That's part of the inclusion and diversity policy.
I watched.
They have to hit a percentage of disabled people on camera.
Okay. I watched BBC News for like an hour.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, I think that's great. There's not even a problem with that at all.
That awkward pause. That's so funny. You just got the sense that obviously, like, Bolstrek will just be like, no, disabled people should not be working in TV. Like, he'll just flat out say it. But Gary here can't quite make the leap. Like, that pause. It's like they're daring the other one to have an issue. And they're like, if you've got to do it first, because even we can't cross this line. But you can tell they're resenting just the presence of a disabled person and just awkwardly like, yep, we're okay with it. Yeah, it's so funny. That pause. HI Ringley says going to need an instant replay on that. Yeah, we're going to get an instant replay.
Really cool. That's totally fine.
BBC have got to hit I think it's a 9% disabled quota.
Okay.
That's part of the inclusion and diversity policy.
I watched.
They have
BBC
to hit
News.
a percentage of disabled people on camera.
Okay. I watched BBC News for like an hour.
That's fine. That's fine.
No, I think that's.
Look how quickly he changes topic. I watched the news. I also, later on in this clip, just after this, they complain how BBC News is talking about climate change and Brexit. It's almost as if there's a climate summit happening in this country at the moment, so that's why they're talking about climate change. It's so fun. Papadon42 says they hate it, and it's amazing. It's so funny. It's so funny just watching him. Look at that face. He's like, I don't know. Do we take this leap? I mean, I don't know. They're not willing to go quite mask off. They're not willing to completely commit to the narrative. But many people did. We have this tweet from Snowy273, who said, so we've had a disabled person, 2 dodgy-looking people, a food bank, and a person living in poverty, all in the first 5 minutes of Doctor Who. A response as well said, wow, just wow, there are some right Zoomers replying to this thread. I take they don't get out much and don't understand that Doctor Who used to be a light-hearted family sci-fi and not a program that had to tick every diversity box. Doctor Who, more like Doctor Woke. And in response to that original Snowy tweet, we had someone saying, what do you have against the disabled, helping those in need and those in need? Genuine question. And somebody says it's supposed to be a sci-fi action-based exciting adventure show. To my response was, and disabled people simply cannot be in sci-fi shows or in media that depicts exciting adventures. Seriously, please think about the implications of what you're saying. And for Snowy and Dogberry as well, I looked through like their tweets and their responses and their likes as well. They were completely on board with the whole, like, yeah, they were liking like every anti-disabled tweet, every anti-representation tweet, things like that. There was absolutely like no deniability. And also, 2 dodgy-looking people. This needs clarification. This is like a complete like. This is a dog whistle, I think, and not just because there's a carving Easter in it. It's really weird. And a food bank and a person living in poverty. Oh, my goodness. Okay. But folks, before you think, Mr. TARDIS, these are just snowflakes on Twitter. These are just perpetually outraged people on Twitter. Well, this controversy, in quotes, is not just reserved for Twitter, but it's actually gaining mainstream traction. This was a review of the episode published by Michael Hogan for The Telegraph, one of the UK's biggest news publications, saying, as the departing 13th Doctor Jodie Whittaker began her year-long swan song, joined in the TARDIS by one familiar companion, Mandip Gill, and one fresh-faced John Bishop, did you have volunteers in a food bank and has a disabled girlfriend on your box-ticking bingo card? Disabled girlfriend, volunteers in a food bank, box-ticking bingo card. We've talked about this before, about Nadine Dorris, who is the head of like the Conservative Party's media division, when talking about their war on woke and the BBC has become an elitist organisation. Disabled representation is explicitly what they're talking about with stuff like this. And Nadia Albina is not just some up-and-coming actor. She has appeared in some of the country's biggest shows and has been acting for 12 years in roles. Like, in the National Theatre, Royal Shakespeare Company, she's been acting for 12 years. Her acting career is older than the mental age of some of these commentators. And also, many people in chat were like, oh, I didn't even notice that she had no right arm. It never got brought up in the episode itself. Like, it's not in the raw text. It's not in the dialogue. You can say whatever you want about the subtext, but it's not like the swarm kidnapped Di, and in that ending scene when they're in the cave, it's not like they were like, oh, Diane, we'll let you go if you can give us 10. Didn't happen. No, she wasn't victimized because of her disability. But no, just having a disabled character appear on TV screens for 2 minutes in a 50-minute episode was simply too much for these people. Too much. One disabled person, and they were reeing on Twitter. They were reeing in the Telegraph. That guy, Michael Hogan, got paid for that. Mainstream traction. And just use Occam's razor here for a moment, folks, okay? If these people consider just seeing a disabled actor on TV screens in a show they don't even have to watch as some kind of personal slight, then when will they be okay with seeing disabled people? They don't want to see them on TV. They don't want to see them in films because they're a box tick. They don't want to see them at the shops. They don't want to see them as their neighbours. They don't even want to see them employed. They want disabled people out of sight, out of mind. Oh, but Will, of course disabled people exist, but we don't want over-representation in our media. We don't want over-representation. Okay, let's do a thought experiment. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the last time Doctor Who had like an overtly physically disabled actor on screen, it was Hannah from It Takes You Away. Yeah, played by Ellie Walwork. That was like 3 years ago, like 14 episodes ago. So let's say in each of those 14 episodes, since It Takes You Away, we've got 10 cast members. I mean, it's the Chibnall era, so each episode probably had like 30 characters. But let's round it down, okay? 14 episodes, 10 characters each, 140 characters, okay? And now we have a disabled character again. That's 1 in about 140. If my math's correct, that's like 0.71-ish%. 0.71% of characters since It Takes You Away have an overt physical disability in Doctor Who. And you may think, okay, 140, that's probably an overestimate. But yeah, there's a reason I made this point anyway. It probably is an overestimate, okay? 140 characters. But disabled people make up over 20% of the UK population. If you wanted accurate representation, not over-representation, it would be 1 in 5. But no, these people were kicking up a stink about 1 in 140. Art Hoovian says Ryan could be considered disabled rights of the character, not the actor. Unless Tosin Cole is dyspraxic, and we have no idea. Sammy Whittaker says the person was deaf in Before the Lake and Under the Flood. Yes, that was awesome. In Series 9. They kick up a stink about 1 in 140 actors in Doctor Who being physically disabled. Because the issue with these people, the issue with you, if I'm going to directly call you out, like, the issue with you isn't that disabled people are represented in media. The issue is with you. It's that disabled people exist at all, and you take issue with that. But rather than outright say it, you frame it in a box-ticking culture war framework that's more palatable, because you can sell it to the Telegraph. Because you actually support and uphold the current systems that mean that over half of disabled people in the United Kingdom are out of the workforce. It's like 65% of disabled people are not working, compared to like 25-30% of able-bodied people in the UK. And when it comes to like the food banks criticism, the food banks complaint, these same people support and endorse the same systems that have resulted in an eye-watering 4,000% increase in food banks in the UK in the past 10 years, in one of the richest countries in the world, where 1 in 5 people in this country live below the poverty line. Because these people cannot sleep at night feeling good until they try and morally justify and or ignore the fact that in Merseyside in Liverpool, the city where this episode was filmed and set, was called Food Bank Capital of the UK because it had the highest percentage of people using food banks daily per capita in the country, with over 20,000 children every year relying on food banks for their day-to-day survival. Because you support these systems, you want to pretend that you don't, and then lecture others about representation and box ticking. Remove your nose from your arsehole, go outside and observe reality around you, and kindly fuck off. Your bigotry is sucking up my bandwidth. And for those interested, that figure for Merseyside, 20,000 children in that area requiring food bank assistance, that was in 2014. And the number will have certainly gone up since then. The nationwide figure for children surviving off food banks is 1 million. And growing every year. It was 500,000 last year, and 1 million this year, and I can almost guarantee that these people voted for that. Part of me thought the reactionaries would come out of the woodworks, but I never expected it to be this quickly. Bolstrek and others complained about Hannah being in It Takes You Away, so even 1 in 140 was too much, but these people do not think that disabled people should be involved in epic storylines, and that they should be the hero or even the supporting players in their own stories. Out of sight, out of mind, because their personal comfort, their own personal need to feel good at night, supersedes acknowledging the dignified existence of over 14 million people in the UK. Alone, 14 million people in this country. And what I loved about Di in the Halloween Apocalypse is that her disability was never brought up. In the episode, it was normalised. It wasn't part of the plot. It wasn't part of the dialogue. And obviously, that's not to say that disabled stories should not be told. Of course they should. But there's something to be said about making it normalised. To the point where in an episode with weeping angels, Sontarans, a dogman, and a crystal-faced creepy dude with shoulder pads, a woman without a right arm, it's positively mundane. But for what appears to be a growing demographic in this country, even that was too much for them. They watched the Halloween Apocalypse and thought a disabled woman was the most unrealistic part about it. And this gets into into the absolute heart, the ugly black pit of conservative reactionary ideology. They're not angry at representation because of box ticking or over-representation or whatever rationale they come up with as a coping mechanism. They hate just representation because they don't like being reminded of their own biases. Seeing a woman or an LGBTQ plus person or a disabled person or a person of colour on their screens holds up a metaphorical mirror to themselves. And some of them acknowledge that reflection. You know, Bolstrek claiming that Demons of the Punjab in Series 11 was a religious conspiracy to get rid of all the white people. But others, like those we've seen in this stream, they'd rather smash the mirror. Because lashing out against a minority group, blaming someone else, is actually easier than acknowledging your own personal shortcomings. It's easier to demonize a marginalized group than to actually self-improve. Hands up in chat if you are legally considered disabled. You don't need to specify whatever. You don't need to say anything. You don't need to like specify, but hands up in chat. My hand's up as well. Obviously, like, it's a 1 in 5 statistic in the UK at least, and I have an international viewership, so there we go, hands are up. It's more common than you think. Book Review says I have about 6 friends that are. There you go, 6 hands up there. American hands up. Lovely stuff. Now, in the episode itself, I've got some issues there. I think some of the dialogue's a little bit arch. I think that, you know, it's arch storytelling in terms of like cute romance at the steps of the museum. But it's normalized. It's brilliant. Love it. But that, just her being a character in her own right, just was too much for reactionary ideology. If they're not happy with this type of representation, where it's not in your face, she's just here on screen, when will they be okay with it? AKB says when the scripts get better. It's not a case of the scripts getting better. This woman being in it alone was enough to piss people off, which is a shame. It's got nothing to do with the subjective quality of the scripts. And if you think that, you're completely ignoring the issue. Anarchic K says the scripts being 100% gold flaws will always be completely discredited if they can find anything to vilify. Completely correct. Remember, Bolstrek and Nerdrotic on that stream for Fugitive for the Dradoon just invented a white male villain to get angry at. We saw in the stream with Nerdrotic and HeelvsBabyFace, they just invented a villainous persona for 2 guys because they were white. The content of the episode doesn't matter. It literally does not matter. They just need to lie. They just need to antagonize. They just need to discriminate. They just need to get pissed off. For an audience who does not care otherwise, who is the back end of that human centipede. I've saw many people in the comment section of that Nerdrotic video saying, you know, I don't watch Doctor Who, I just watch your commentary. And those people are, whether they know it or not, some of them love it. Some of them devour that shit at the back of the human centipede. They are at the back of that centipede, whether they know it or not. They are getting misrepresentative accounts from people with ulterior motives. Thank you to Darren Voss for the $5 super chat.
Wonderful chap. All of them.
Says, I was reading about Graeae, a group that promotes disabled actors. It was founded by Nabil Shaban, who is in Vengeance on Varos. Yes, Syl from Vengeance on Varos in the 1980s and Trial of a Time Lord. Yes. I'm assuming this is it. Graeae is a force for change in world-class theatre, breaking down barriers, challenging preconceptions, championing diversity across the sector, and boldly placing deaf and disabled artists centre stage. Check out their website. It's spelt GRAEAE.org.